Banking, trading, and financial services are data-intensive businesses. Looking back over the last few decades, several technology waves have occurred, all with different drivers. In the 80s and 90s, the focus was on digitizing markets, how we trade, deliver market data, and distribute news. From 2000 until 2008, the ubiquity of the internet shifted the focus to the interconnection between financial institutions and customers. Since then, the cloud, big data, and machine intelligence have taken center stage. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter for the Nasdaq, and joining me today are Mike O'Rourke, global head of machine intelligence and data services at Nasdaq, Brendan Carley, global head of frameworks product management at Thomson Reuters, and John Robson, he's executive director for First Derivatives KX Systems. And we're going to discuss a panel hosted by the Nasdaq and our partners at Markets Media on machine intelligence and how it's impacting market participants. So we're going to go down the line, learn about the new and emerging technologies from their respective companies. And the question is cloud computing influence your products, particularly machine intelligence? We'll start off here.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The past couple of decades have been about aggregating data. And the amount of data that's generated by banks themselves now is petabytes every day. Huge problem to organize all of that data and to store it and to retrieve it. And for many years, we've been working with banks to help them database that data that they generate and compare it to external data so that they can analyze markets and analyze their performance and increasingly start to be compliant with regulation, which is also asking them to report a lot on what's been happening in their marketplace and the trades they've executed during every day. Increasingly, that burden says, let's find a more efficient way to actually run this and store this. And the cloud is a destination that people are increasingly beginning to be comfortable with and starting to understand that some of these activities don't generate any differentiation. They actually are there simply to provide some of the reporting requirements that the government asks for. And therefore, why not put it into a safe place in a cloud and have that ability to be able to store and retrieve information using the elastic capability of processing that cloud technologies deliver to banks. So the idea of building huge data centers and running them yourselves is starting to give way to let's find a way to be more efficient and start to look at how we can use service-based delivery of content as a means to operate the middle, back, and front office of these banks.
Okay, Mike, let's hear about it from Nasdaq's perspective.
Sure. I mean, cloud technologies, just to add to that, is allowing us to innovate more rapidly. The time to market is now shortened, and the amount of risk that you take on for any project is lessened as well, because you don't have to provision hardware, with the end in mind, with the end state you're paying for when you have all of your customers. You can roll it out as you go. You can expand capacity as you go. It's also allowing us, to ask bigger questions, ask better questions, and with machine intelligence, we're able to extract that and create better products for our customers. So we find that we can have more targeted, higher value products for our customers now because we're leveraging this type of technology.
Okay, let's hear about it from Reuters.
Yeah, so I think what these guys have said is absolutely true, right? So it's about scalability, it's about agility and the ability to innovate. The economics are certainly there, not only in terms of just cost reduction, but let's say you want to spin up 1,000 CPUs to do a back test on some model and you want to run it on 10 years of data. You can do that. You've got the agility to do that very quickly and then bring that down when you need it. So it allows banks, it allows hedge funds, it allows other firms in the financial industry to very rapidly innovate using that technology. The other thing actually I think that a lot of people miss is it's not just the underlying technology infrastructure, it's the software ecosystem as well. So people are actually able to leverage a lot of the investments that have been made in the cloud technology, not just in the hardware, but in all the software tools around that, big data analytics and so forth. So what that allows is financial firms to really focus on what's their incremental value add. So instead of trying to replicate the entire technology stack, what's their secret sauce that they can add that's actually truly differentiating and not just replicating table stakes kind of stuff.
Well, John and Brendan, let's talk about the regulators and market participants, because there seems to be a lot of demand coming from that side of the business.
Yeah. Well, particularly this year, as MiFID, the deadlines for compliance with the rules for MiFID start to get closer and closer.
Explain MiFID a bit, because it's big in Europe, but we're starting to see the conversation now in the U.S. among the brokers.
Yeah, MiFID is a set of regulations that really require banks and trading institutions to record every single transaction and be able to publish that to their customers and also be able to make sure that they're compliant with a whole set of regulations that make sure that they don't cross any boundaries for things like systematic internalization, which means becoming too big in a particular asset. So all of these trades, which are coming from multiple sources and multiple departments in banks, typically were all left in silos, and that was okay. But now a bank needs to have a universal enterprise-wide view of everything that's happening in their organization. And they're using electronic platforms, multiple different platforms in different locations. All of that has to be brought together. And then the reports that are required, which are standard reports by the government, have to be completed, drilling down into that data. So you need a normalized standard database that allows you to be able to access that information and publish those reports reliably and consistently.
Right.
So a big challenge is bringing that data together, because it starts by being inconsistent.
I mean, Brennan, that's so hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Well, it's what we do actually for our business, right? So, John is absolutely right. If you look at it fundamentally, MiFID is a data management problem. What firms are doing is they need to get real-time data, they need to get historical data, they need to get pricing and reference data, and they need to bring that all together, and then they need to actually extract some information and some value from that. MiFID is going to be a huge driver of that. So 2017 for most of our customers is MiFID, right? So MiFID goes into effect January 1st of 2018. Very hard deadline on the one hand, cost pressures on the other hand, and a huge data management problem. So firms are really looking for somebody who can actually integrate the data and the analytics, bring that all together for them. But it doesn't end in 2017. There are actually some aspects of MiFID that take effect in 2018. So John alluded to the systematic internalizer regime. That actually comes into effect in September of 2018. So there's still more work that's going to happen there. And even as banks are starting to grapple with MiFID, they're now also starting to grapple with some of the other regulatory challenges like FRTB, which is part of the Basel capital adequacy rules. The overall drive, that we're seeing from the regulators is greater transparency, right? So when they're looking for greater transparency, whether that's in the form of the MiFID regulations or in the form of FRTB, all that drives data requirements, reporting requirements, and analytic requirements for the banks.
Right. So what's the exchange's view on that, Mike?
Well, our thought is, when we talk to our customers, how do we make this easier for them? They're worried about risk, not just from a compliance standpoint, but financial, operational risk. So what are the type of services that we can offer them that'll ease those burdens, that'll make it easier for them to concentrate on their core businesses, their core differentiator. So, at Nasdaq, that's what we focus on is, all right, how do we provide those things to the greater market?
Well, let's spend some time on data as a service. I think that's a really important theme for this panel. And just across every vertical, technology, and whether you're talking about Apple or IBM, software services is the key phrase here. Data as a service for market participants and your clients.
Yeah.
Let's spend some time on that.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, one of the reasons why Brennan and I are here together today is that we've been working together to see if we can't provide a really complete service to solve for some of these problems. Rather than have banks run this multiple times, let's see if we can't create a service that delivers a complete solution to the problem. And in the last 5 or 6 years, Thomson Reuters has done an amazing job of rebuilding the entire architecture for how they bring together millions of points of data, reference data, static data, historical data, real-time market data from Nasdaq and the other exchanges, and created an environment that people can get to that data as a service. We have worked with them to create a new system called Velocity Analytics 8, which effectively is a managed service, a data as a service solution that aggregates all of that data with our clients' data that sits within the KX databases. So we can provide a ready-built solution with the reporting that's required generated out of this entire environment as a service. So that's something we've been working on together for a while now and starting to bring to market. So I think we've got a really exciting solution for that right now.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing here at the Nasdaq, too. We're always talking about market data. It seems to be the catchphrase around here.
Yeah, and I think that you're right. The focus is how do we provide these things as a platform as a service? How do we collect that data and then be able to provide services for them and be able to provide like the next level of functionality on top of that. So, if you think about traditionally these firms, they've got to generally would have to consolidate all of that data themselves, and a lot of the day-to-day things that all the different firms have to do, they're repeating across each one of the firms. And so how do we take that, bring that together, and then just offer that as a service? So now we can offer more services on top of that, or they can also allows them to focus on their core business.
Right.
So some of the things that, for instance, are even done manually, where they would have an analyst or something now bringing things together with Excel spreadsheets, We could use machine intelligence, we could use analytics to bring those things together, use the platform, the power of the platform in the cloud to provide those so that they no longer, they can have those same analysts now focusing on
so the key
value to the customers.
Sounds like efficiency is what all the services are trying to incorporate for their clients. But Brendan, let me ask you this, because you touched about this before. Near and long-term goals and expectations for adopting the latest technology. The rollout is expected 2018, but what's next?
So as I said, 2017, 2018 is going to be all about MiFID. Kind of the next thing that we see on the roadmap is FRTB and the compliance with that, which actually takes effect January of 2019, but banks have to get ready for that in advance. On top of that, on one hand, you've got continued cost pressures on both the banks and on the buy side. And on the other hand, you've got a continuing search for alpha and for differentiation.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm running a fund of some kind, I'm looking for some kind of differentiation. And one of the things actually that we're seeing that's really interesting, MiFID is driving it, right? But one of the obligations under MiFID is unbundling of research. So what does that do? Well, what it does is it means if you're a broker providing research, you really need to differentiate that research. And if you're a buy side, it means you might not actually be buying some of that research, you might be creating some of that research yourself. Research is not being produced, or won't be produced exclusively by a bunch of research analysts writing up reports. Increasingly, it's being driven by machine learning data. And you've got, algorithms are being applied to news, algorithms applied to text. And, as John said, you've got petabytes of data that are aggregated in a central store. So you've got market data, financial data, all kinds of data, and you want to be able to actually extract some intelligence, extract some alpha, and then be able to generate some trading returns based on that.
What are you going to do, eliminate the sell side completely? How are you going to pay your brokers?
No, I think, so under the MiFID regime, brokers get paid directly in the form of commissions, right? But they don't get, they get paid separately for research, and it's broken out separately.
Right.
But I think the role of the sell side is going to change. And I think the scrutiny that you're going to see on research provided by the sell side is going to increase, because when firms are actually paying hard dollars for it instead of soft dollars for it, they're going to want to make sure that they're getting value for that dollar. So the brokers are going to be investing more in machine kind of learning, machine-driven research generation, and the buy side is going to be doing that as well.
Talk about a shift from the mid-2000s when everything was about soft dollar commissions. So
yeah.
It's interesting to see, even from the sell side, how much it's evolving with this. So how much more can the exchanges and market participants advance? Because it seems, from my understanding, we are really at the pinnacle of this technology.
Yeah, well, I think what Brendan said is true. The regulation of MiFID has driven a requirement for everybody to up their games in terms of their ability to aggregate and get hold of data in a consistent form.
Right.
But the next wave is to really draw intelligence from that and understand how to create alpha or create differentiation or watch out for things that might go wrong in the trading environment. And when you're looking across massive amounts of data, you need a database that is powerful enough to be able to find those exceptions and bring them to your attention. What people are looking for in that data now is small differences in masses of data. And so data visualization and the tools to provide people on the sell side and the buy side the ability to empower people with analytic tools that can enable them to get into that data easily and bring it back and look for those opportunities and look for those risks. That is the next wave of what's happening.
So we're really just at the beginning then?
We're at the beginning, and I think business intelligence and AI and all these terms that are used are really a catch-all phrase for what comes next. And I think it's a really exciting future. We've now got the underlying technology in place, and certainly the things we're doing together create that sort of core engine for data that you can use as a service. What differentiates you now is your ability to use tools and use capability to extract insight from that information and act on it.
Wow, that's really exciting. I never realized it or put it into that perspective where we really just are at the baseline. Can only imagine what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. So, Mike, do you think machines are going to have to adapt to humans better since we are now adapting to them?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about it now, most of this we're talking about is efficiencies of bringing the data together. Okay, now we can provide more efficiencies to the customer, but the next wave is going to be using that so that we can improve our workflow. So if you think about traditionally, your workflow, day to day, revolves around what do I need to do with the computer in order to extract the information, the insights that I need. And what's going to happen is you're going to see a shift where with machine intelligence, with new technology, the computer will have to start to adapt to our needs. So basically you'll have people where you can express your intent. This is what I'm looking for. And then the technology will go out there and say, okay, let me find what are the appropriate data sets, what are the appropriate analytics in order to come back and effectively answer that question, rather than the user having to mold their workflow, pull the data together themselves. to be effective.
Yeah, I find that to be another interesting shift as well. And Brendan, we'll wrap it up with you. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think if you look at the automation, it's kind of proceeded in waves. So I mean, we're here at Nasdaq today. Nasdaq actually started years ago automating the actual matching process, which is kind of at the center. And then if you kind of look at as it rippled out from there, we saw automation of the trading function that's actually performed on the exchanges in the form of algorithms and so forth. And now that's actually kind of rippled out to the research and the portfolio management that ultimately drives that trading activity. So I think what you're seeing is just the pervasive adoption of technology and automation through that. But as it's rippled out, it's also had ripple effects kind of in the other direction as well. So changing, and we see exchanges innovating with new matching algorithms and so forth to accommodate the new trading strategies. I think on the people versus machine, I don't think it's a matter of machines adapting to people or people adapting to machines. I think both are kind of moving forward in parallel. The machines are getting more sophisticated, more complex, and as humans, we're getting used to and incorporating them into our workflow and adapting to them. So if you look at a lot of the processes, whether it's analytics, data analysis, and so forth, the machines are doing a lot of the work, but the people are actually guiding them in an active part of that feedback loop.
Wow, absolutely fascinating. I look forward to continuing this conversation because, again, I think we are at the baseline, and every vertical of this business certainly cares about it. Thank you very much for joining us today at the Nasdaq, and thank you, Facebook, for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter for the Nasdaq.